continue one more topic on the budgeting techniques. Okay, in previous class, we discussed on traditional base and then zero base, right? So the third one is planning, programming, budgeting system. Okay, so for your information, I think we read out how it was introduced. Okay, and so you can see that planning, programming, and budgeting system, I think definitely is an improvement. Okay, so a quick review on zero-based budgeting. That is good. Zero-based budgeting is good in terms of to evaluate the activities of government organizations and to make sure that services provided by the government are most relevant, okay, to the stakeholders, to the target groups. And then it's just that it's time consuming because I think as you should be able to understand at this point, the government budget is provided annually for 1 year. Okay, and evaluating activities of organizations, it sounds like strategic in nature. So if you think about, let's say, a company, let's say, if you, possibly if you can think of one major phone company like Apple, or for electronics or technology like Apple. Okay, or Samsung, if they want to introduce new products, so it's kind of a strategic decision. Okay, so similarly, so strategic decisions is time consuming unless because it involves discussion, deliberation, authorizations, okay, from low level to up level within organizations, and if it is company with shareholders, but with the government, by the cabinet ministers or by the parliament. Okay, so zero base is good in principle, but there is a difficulty to practice. Then we move on to planning and programming budgeting system. Okay, of course, if you look at this, it's quite in terms of the technology or the technique. Okay, was in 1965 and 1969. But I think it's good to know the history of it because then you understand what's happening nowadays. Okay, basically coming from all these initiatives. And so in this case, if you look at Malaysia, it was in the US in 1965 and then introduced in Malaysian government in 1969. But for information, this is these techniques is basically promoted worldwide. So many countries, I think, it's like a global trend at that time to introduce program-based budgeting for the government to provide, to plan and to provide for their budget. Okay. So the objective to improve resource allocations, right? So resource allocations, I think in accounting generally we talk about resource, best use of try to maximize profits. Okay, so like capital rationing, all that. But in the case of in economics and definitely in this case for government, okay, to improve resource allocations is always the basic question. If they want to introduce new techniques or new budgeting system, so this will be the fundamental question that will be asked: how the new techniques can improve resource allocations. Okay, so resource allocations across the for government activities, for education, for technology. I think for you have to at this point you have to understand the dynamics of government services. Okay, they have traditional services, okay, like education, like security, defense. But at the same time, there are also new dynamics because of a global trend, because of socio-economic development, okay, because of globalization. Okay, recently they introduced the locate resources for the telecommunication, okay, IR 5.0, for instance, okay. So these are examples how with the resource allocations that is undertaken by the government. Provide a common framework for the participants in the budgeting process. Okay, I think to relate this to, because at the end, who will prepare the budget? Okay, for government generally. Okay, class, who involved in preparing the budget for the government at this point that you understand?
The Parliament.
Okay, the Parliament is deliberating and authorizing. And before that, sorry?
Tengku Zafrul.
Yeah, well, the Kuzapro exactly is basically consolidating and making the decisions, presenting, okay, agreed by the cabinet and then by the various committees before being tabled to the parliament. Okay, who else? I mean, Tunku Zafrul cannot develop 360 billion by himself, isn't it? So, who else? Who should, or what parties involved? Okay, so government agencies. Sorry?
Accounting and finance.
Yeah, accounting, finance. Okay, good point. With regards to accounting and finance, yeah, so different government agencies, you have to be careful because some of them is the one who preparing the budget is the administrative director. Director in charge of administration, okay, not necessarily accounting department, okay. So maybe for statutory bodies they do, okay, or if government GLCs, governing companies, if they request for direct funding from the government, okay, of course they have the secretariat possibly under division, finance division, okay. But others they okay, through budget committee as well as administration unit, okay. But with various government agencies, and mainly, and at the end will be the submitted by controlling officers. Okay, definitely in that sense, okay, they must have common framework, okay, how to provide the information. So in other words, to guide them. So what information are needed for them to submit, okay. Just like when you submit any proposal, proposal to the banks, proposal, if you know, student bodies, they submit proposal with the budget. What else? If you have any experience submitting proposal that you request money, okay, you can use similar concepts, okay, to get the understanding. So what it's saying is basically they must have the relevant information need to be provided before the budget can be considered. So in this case, okay, planning and programming budgeting system, as you understand, the zero base, so it provide that framework so that all the information required will be submitted and to be considered by, I mean, of course, will be useful for the government as a whole, for the cabinet ministers, for the treasury to provide the guidelines, as well as for the all government agencies for them to submit their budget proposal. Okay, covering operating budget and expenditures. Okay, the third point with regards to operating budget expenditures. So it's still limited to operating budget. So at this point, there are two type of budget. One is operating, the other is development. So in the case of private sector, you have operating budget or annual budget. You also have capital expenditures. Okay, in government, they don't call it capital expenditures, they call it development expenditures. Okay, so development expenditures is another, but programming PBBS is covering operating budget. Okay, take note of that because there's also relations when we discuss in the future the last techniques on outcome-based budgeting, where they try to combine these two together. Okay, the allocation of budget. So at this point, the word allocation of budget, what come to your mind is basically how the government, okay, the cabinet, uh, and also Ministry of Finance had to develop the budget proposal to be tabled to the Parliament before the Parliament authorize. So what are the process involved? Okay, and that's one level. The other is here in this case is when program-based budgeting is introduced. Is introduced. Okay, so there is a stage there. They call it programming. Okay, planning, right? So what will be the objective, the priorities of the government, and then programming stage. So programming here, of course, it sounds like computer programming, but here is basically to translate the planning and then the structure. Let's say who should be responsible. Okay, in what form is it? Departments, agencies, study bodies. Okay, that is a programming process. Okay, with and then when you understand what program is, once the program is approved, then it becomes the basis for the budget to be distributed. Okay, that's why for each program, of course, for us to understand this is basically each program is one government organization. Okay, to put it in a very straightforward. Okay, so IUM is a program. Okay, so that's controlling officers. Okay, they are managing multiple programs, which is translated, operationalized in the form of various government agencies. So in general, what come to your mind will be, if you mentioned in the case of budgeting, okay, they basically provide budget for a program. So that program is basically a government agency. Okay, so each government agency have to prepare their budget as basis of their for the basis of their budget preparation. Okay, and at the consolidated level, at the aggregated level, definitely the controlling officers is basically responsible to prepare the budget at the ministry. Okay, so and then there is budget preparation. Okay, that can be done annually, and then program evaluation. Okay, in the case of the program-based budgeting, program evaluation. Okay, later on we'll see that this is it's like in zero-based budgeting. Okay, they evaluate the activities annually, whereas in the case of program-based budgeting, they embed this feature to make sure that government agencies, their services and goods and services that they provide to the public is still relevant. So how for them to be able to do that is through program evaluation. So in other words, the program itself being evaluated. So in other words, this feature is basically to tell that government agency, okay, can be evaluated either to improve, to restructure, to revise, and even if you look at companies, in group companies, there are companies that have been disposed, and if the companies are not making money, it can be dissolved as well. Okay, so I think these dimensions is very close to program evaluation. Right, planning stage, I think very obvious from the objective. Okay, and from the objective, basically this can be developed through political priorities, okay, the demand of the public, and the needs of the country as a whole. Okay, that's why I think in the case of Malaysia, how they do that, normally in line with long-term plan, okay, and then medium-term plan. So budget is a short-term plan, which is annually. Okay, so later on we'll see there are various types of government plan. Okay, in the case of Malaysia, they call it for medium term, it's Malaysian plan. So which is every 5 years, and of course that must also be in line with the long-term plan of the country. Okay, so then all these program objectives must be developed in line with those framework. Okay. Importance of the objective: provide framework for better planning process to avoid duplication of functions at the various departments. Okay, so you can see this example. One of the objective of Ministry of Education is to improve the quality and improvement in rural school education system. So will be specifically highlighted, okay, for each sectors. So next slide. Then with that, once they have the objective to identifying programs and activities, involve the selection of best feasible alternative for the purpose of achieving predetermined objective and reflecting it in programs. Okay, so you can see that it's very similar to zero-based budgeting, and to develop the best alternative within the program. So what would be the best alternative to deliver the services? Okay, a program is a combination of resources and formulated to realize objective and outputs. Okay, road and bridges program in Ministry of Public Works, an example. As a program structure, the process of breaking up program into distinct activities and sub-activities which contribute to the achievement of the objective. Okay, so example here, maintenance services, okay, as part of the activity. All right, so what it says basically under program, okay, as part of budget for budgeting purposes, under program they call it activities. It's like sub-activities under the programs, and which the budget will also be provided. So in other words, like let's say your IUM is a program. So under IUM there is a activities, and under activity also sub-activities that the budget will be provided for. Okay, these are the terms used in program budgeting. Right. So put it simply, this programming is basically if you understand organization. So organization, they must have objective. And then with objective, there are activities, people, process, okay? But these are the structure. And with that structure, there must be budget provided for it, okay? Otherwise, if you have the structure, but there is no budget, then there's no way that the government agency or the government program can be run to achieve whatever policies that need to be achieved. Any questions so far? Okay, no, right. And then another element in the program-based budgeting is program evaluation, right? To make sure that the activities are relevant, and so assessment to review the relevance of activities against the objective, and outdated activities should be considered for revision. Okay, so in the case of program-based budgeting, they also mention about performance indicators that cover both qualitative and quantitative indicators. So sometimes quantitative indicators is not good enough, because in the case of government, okay, their results cannot be quantified as good as, in the case of private sector or profit making, they translate this into sales. Okay, there is no sales in the case of government, but if there is sale not at the market price, then all these are being, so the proxy, other measures being developed to represent the results, the outcome and the impact. Okay, so in other words, the demand for this performance information, even in program-based budgeting, this demand of performance information should be developed, so it's there already. All right, but in the case of program evaluation, the most important point that you must be able to pick up is to make sure that government services is relevant, okay, updated, so that okay, they can even improve in terms of technology, type of services, okay, the way services being provided, because the customers' needs or the target groups' needs keep on changing. Okay, never been the same, and then with the new technology and others, okay, maybe change in the social patterns, this also can have an impact. So I think that's the main one. That's why I think if the absence of this, if let's say in the budgeting techniques, absent of program evaluation assessment, then you can see that the program provided by the government is irrelevant, or may not be able to meet the expectation of the target customers or the target public. Okay, so that can create a big problem to the government, where complaints can be posed against the government. I think increasingly the government also they open up the platform so that the feedback can be given to them, either through quality initiative, okay, customer satisfaction survey. Then nowadays you start having ombudsman, where the public or the target groups can post their views on the type of services being provided. Okay, so how to make sure that these are so the element, because you must remember this element, once it's embedded in the system, then it will trigger the system that this process must take place within the government organizations or within the government activities. Okay, I think that is very important. Of course, it's not as good as in the private sector. In the private sector, if they don't provide good services, okay, the market will penalize them. Simply, they won't be able to sell their services, and with that, they will incur losses, and then they have to restructure their business. Unlike that, with the private sector, in the government, they don't have that market pressure. Okay, so there must be alternative ways how for them to improve. Okay, these are one of the alternatives. Okay, with regards to advantage of program-based budgeting, promote clear lines of responsibility, thus enhancing accountability. Okay, how they be able to do that is, I can clearly say that because of the programming element. Because with that programming, it's just like the decision unit under zero-based budgeting, where you have the manager, you have the specific objective, what to achieve, and then the resources are being supported, are being allocated for that. So once you have that controlling officers as the main, then with the online managers, that it will create that clear lines of responsibility. Okay, resources be entrusted for them to achieve their objective. So I think in accounting, not only we are generalists, we look at all this pattern to evaluate. So to make sure that even I think one of the accounting scholars, if you talk about resources, so one person must be in charge about the resources. If there are resources being allocated, but no person being in charge to oversee the use of that resources, then it can create inefficiencies. Okay. Secondly, promote efficiency and effectiveness of use of resources among public sector managers. I think that's why one of the mechanisms definitely performance measures. Okay, and I think program evaluation as well. Okay, can contribute to this efficiency and effective use of public resources. And of course, the quality of their planning then can also contribute. Okay, and on top of that, the program that is being established by the government must relate to the priorities of the government that can commensurate with the current demand in the country. Okay, either because of in this recent example will be economic slowdown, changes in the ways of doing things because of technology and others. So that need to be taken into account, including the demographic background of the citizens changed over the years. Provide better planning and control mechanism for the parliament to oversee executive functions. Okay, so through this programming, one person in charge, then of course they'll be accountable to the parliament. Okay, that's why I mean still the use of controlling officers to be accountable, but with the programming, with the expected performance, and then this can improve the accountability. Right, provide a systematic methods of performance evaluation, furnishes a management tool to public sector agencies, government, and managers. I think definitely with KPIs, okay, with performance measure quantitative and qualitative information together with the budget. Then achieving those targets, the performance can be assessed. Assisting public sector organization in setting budget priorities between competing programs and activities. Okay, so I mean this one is at the cabinet level usually, okay, to commensurate with the new demands of the public. Okay, then problems. Of course, you know that there is always development or continuous improvement in that sense. Right, budget is used as an allocation tool rather than as management tool. Okay, so the focus is on allocating the budget, but when it comes to managing the budget to achieve the objective of organizations, there is a gap. So there is no clear mechanisms how to facilitate or assist the controlling officers to be able to achieve that. The information system did not support the program-based budgeting. Okay, I think the easy way to understand this, traditionally always manual system, and if you talk about manual system means Okay, they must have good support from the accountants or administrative officers, functions to make sure that their budget information is updated. Okay, and then of course the feedbacks from all line managers. These are needs good information system. But those times in 1960s, 70s, even before 1990s, so all these are manual-based system. I think the computer-based system, the transition started in 1990s mainly, and then moving forward. Okay, and goal and objective of individual program activities are not clear and well defined, should lead to greater political control than use of cybernetic control. So what they mentioned here, sometimes government organizations, either both at the ministry level or at the agency level, the objectives are not clearly defined. And there always a room for ambiguities. Okay, and I think politically, ambiguity is something that is an advantage. Problem is in developing relevant performance indicators. I think that point also, that period is something new to develop key performance measures. Successful implementing the first component program but failed to implement the performance. Okay, I think quite obvious. Resistance to change led to continuation of simplicity of incremental budgeting, resulting to a mixture of budget preparation approaches, program-based plus incremental budgeting. Okay, that's another issue. Because still in terms of budgeting process, incremental budgeting still dominate the way how budget is being prepared. I think at the same time there was also issues of budget cut, issues of it's very difficult to bring in the line managers and top management into the program, into the budgeting process. That's one of the reasons why program-based budgeting need improvement. Any question? Okay, additional issues of programming. What should be done to develop an effective program? Okay, effective program, do we focus on structure, process, and culture? The structure creates clear line of responsibility and accountability. The process, will that be more on managerialism and consumerism? I think some of these terms just to provoke your intellectuals, but you can Google them, all this what it means, all this information, right? But point to think of, but at least the first one, what should be done to develop an effective program? Any takers? Simple answer first, then you go through, think about it, and try to understand a bit. And listen carefully. When I explained, I also bring in technical issues that come together with this budgeting process. Okay, so listen carefully. If you're not sure, you can ask. Okay, certain terms that I mentioned. So because sometimes it has meaning. Okay, in terms of management process, in terms of accounting process. I mean the financial management process. Okay, or budgeting process. Or how things are being done within the government agencies. All right, so no question. I continue. No question, is it? Let me see. Okay, no question. Okay, next slide. Additional issues in public finance. Okay, budget deficit. You see budget deficit there? Look at the photo. Is the photo related to budget deficit? Okay, so basically the tractor is sinking, isn't it? Okay, so if I think just if debts, debt, is for developing countries, government use debt because of and particularly now during the crisis, and also even in the normal time, they can always use debt as long as it's manageable and under control. They can still pay. Okay, but nevertheless, there is also a need for the government to control their level of expenditures. So I think this one is promoted by World Bank. They call it fiscal control, okay, to control budget deficit. So what they're saying is basically just to keep the cap, to keep the cap on the budget, on the debt limit, okay, as well as the budget deficit, okay. I think later on we'll see how this being translated in the case of Malaysian government, that they basically cap the level of expenditures, okay. That's why I think this also definitely is related. I think many countries also they control their debt level, okay. So debt level of the government need to be authorized by the parliament. Okay? You can see this in the US, okay, they keep on increasing the debt level. In the case of Malaysian government as well, okay, they cap the debt level, can be taken by the government. Okay, because budget deficit financed by loan, internal and external borrowings may push up costs of borrowing in the financial market, and the result will be cut down private investment. Okay, so these are the options by the government. But sometimes definitely if during the economic crisis, okay, government expenditures is used as a stimulus to create consumption. That's also an option. I think all these are being balanced. But I think one of the ways to tell is government are doing on the right direction or not. We can also look at the rating, isn't it? The bond rating, all this by the international rating bodies. So I think at this point still manageable, isn't it? Or you have any other comment? Class, are you listening? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So what is this? Another photo. It is public service or profit-making services? Anyone? What is this? The photo?
The bridge.
Bridge. Okay. Another.
Dam.
The water dam. So the water dam is used for?
Energy.
And in this case, most likely? Okay, most likely the dam for energy, for electricity. Okay, so generally these are all public services, isn't it? Okay, paid by the government. And so we'll see later on. But generally these are public services, okay? So huge amount of massive expenditures. All right, no question. I will continue with the next topic. Okay, so you can download this from the government, the GC. We'll cover this strategic planning, national government, and then annual budgeting process. So the last two is about a continuation of the accounting techniques, but okay, showing the contemporary budgeting techniques. Okay, as mentioned, strategic planning. So you can see this. Okay, planning for socio-economic development, right? And then okay, definitely economic planning unit, EPU, play an important role. Okay, in the planning and controlling activities, Malaysian government, right? And also together with other government agencies. Okay, I think like EPU, government think tanks that you can, it's all employment opportunities for everyone. Okay, the planning process and the ministries, okay, provide the overall framework, and then okay, the cabinet ministers, and before we move on to the parliament. I think these three level you have to recognize. Okay, of course the feedback from the ministries and generally Ministry of Finance will be the secretariat. Then discussion at the cabinet level. Okay, before it will move to table to the parliament for approval. So you can see that the planning can be top down as well as bottom up. And I think generally the feedbacks coming from the government agencies, but nowadays you can see increasingly with the media, okay, with the social media, I think the engagement from the general public, okay, I think the use of social media as well, where you can provide your feedbacks. And on top of that, I think call it a series of engagement with the major stakeholders. Can be NGO, it can be business industry leaders. Okay, to provide the feedbacks. Okay, for instance, I think in the case of okay, now we move on to I think in the case of Malaysian government, because we are at the transition now, where they are moving to what do you call it? The new Malaysian plan is in the pipeline, isn't it? Okay, by right they should have tabled that together with the last budget. Okay, but I think because of the situation basically COVID. Because of COVID, then there is an issue for them to table, so they delay. Right, later on I think I did mention as well, but I just want to show the engagement. Okay, so these are from 12 Nation Plan. Okay, so they provide platform by EPU. If you look at the address there, this is basically this platform provided by the EPU, Economic Planning Unit. Okay, so you can see that you can provide your feedbacks. Okay, but of course now it's overdue. I just want you, okay, even students, see, student also very critical, very important groups of people. Okay, so what are the issues? See the issues given, so you can provide. But of course, these are overdue. Just to show you that social media or website is used to get feedbacks for the government to solicit feedbacks from the public, right? And yeah, people like you are very important. Okay, not only the government or NGO or the private. Okay, you can provide feedback directly. So that's the level of engagement that the government try to have, okay, for them to prepare for the Malaysian plan. Because this Malaysian plan, okay, they will be the 12th Malaysian plan. By right, it should be tabled last year, okay, during when they tabled the budget. Okay, I think because of COVID they delay. But the expectation, okay, if you can check in the media, that will be this coming this month basically. So anytime, it's basically they will table. But now I think the government very busy with this vaccination and others, right? But anyway, then this will become the basis for the next 5 years, how the government will develop their resources. Okay, that's one way to look at it. And then come back. Okay, so that's the process. Okay, the engagement with the with the public, and definitely the government themselves. Okay, they as we mentioned, okay, they prepare their budget proposal as well. So from all dimensions, it can be considered. And I think nowadays, I think social media quite have a big impact, particularly when commenting some of the government actions. That they basically listen. Okay. Before at the end it will be approved by the parliament. Okay, these are overall development, the planning process. Okay, I think the slide, the website that I showed to you, okay, is part of this process. Okay, of course, this is like a flow chart. It's not really a flow chart, but you can see this, right, from the Economic Planning Unit, the Secretariat. Okay, of course, now the development plan is the 12th Malaysian plan. Okay, so you can see that the EPU is the Secretariat for National Economic Action Council, as well as National Economic Consultative Council. Okay, so the EPU. So EPU is under which ministry? Anyone? Economic Planning Unit under which ministry?
Ministry of Finance.
One more answer.
Entrepreneurship.
One more answer.
Economy Affairs.
I think now is senior minister, isn't it? Senior ministers. Okay. There was a change. Traditionally, it was under Prime Minister office. Okay, and then it moved to. Then the Economic Planning Unit was converted into Economic Affairs Ministry. Okay, but nowadays I'm not sure. Is it as a senior minister, as a separate ministry, or still they turn back because of the change of government? They turn back that to under Prime Minister office. Okay, but anyway, the most important is the unit itself. Okay, the Economic Planning Unit become the secretariat for this council. Generally, this council chaired by the Prime Minister. Okay, and then there is the National Development Planning Committee. Okay, the draft is submitted to National Planning Council, then to the Cabinet Ministers. So these are I think the process now is taking place to develop the 12 Nation Plan before they move up to the Parliament. So I think possibly now at the point of National Planning Council and the Cabinet Ministers before they get finally approved, and then will be tabled to the Parliament. Okay, that is on the planning, the development planning. So you can see the feedbacks, proposal from federal ministers and agencies. You see the word proposal down at the bottom there. So the government agencies definitely key areas, key sector, key agencies for them to provide all the information. At the same time, the ministries also they engage directly various stakeholders. Okay, so you can see that consultations to the private sector. I think from time to time, even the annual budget, they'll do consult the all interested groups. So in this case, a bit long term, or more information is needed, as well as state government. Right, once it is approved, and then you can see that on the other side, it's on the right side, this National Action Council. Okay, these are the implementation stage, where the agency involved is Implementation and Coordination Unit, ICU. Okay, very nice name. What's the name? ICU. Okay, generally the word ICU, where you find it?
Hospital.
Exactly. Okay, so these two are very powerful units in the government. Okay, these are particularly they are monitoring the development projects. Okay, and the budget itself, and also the effectiveness of government agencies. Okay, so ICU working together with the Public Service Department and Commission, okay, overseeing government agencies. Can they achieve the objective or not? If the government or agencies, they basically not functioning well, so these people are basically, there's another way to oversee government agencies. Okay, of course the auditors, they can also hold their function, but the ICU, these are critical group, unit to make sure that all government agencies they should achieve what they're supposed to achieve. Okay, and because if the government agencies become weak, they receive budget but they cannot function as it should be. So they call it all these diplomatic officers, and under the public service department, they can basically replace the management and then take over to make sure things are in order before they transfer back to professional groups. So generally, all these government agencies are run by professional groups. Okay, technical groups. If you look at public work department, okay, the right people to be there is to run is engineers. If you look at let's say National Audit Department, okay, or even your IUM, for instance, okay, who should run this organization must be academics. Okay, so because they are professional groups in the perspective of the government. But if they cannot function well, then ICU and the public service departments, they can change or replace the management, and then put things in order before the new management will come in. But it is a worst scenario situation. It's very rare to happen. I think nowadays, hardly you can heard about this kind of issues. But that's how the control within the government setups. Right. So development planning process. Okay. These are various council. Okay. If you look, I think that's as mentioned just now. Okay. So there's planning and there's implementation. Okay. Planning under APU and implementation is under ECU. Right. Okay. Now we move on to planning horizon. Okay. Of course, for international students, right? You can see this. You can compare what's happening in Malaysia as well against your countries. Okay, are they similar, or they may have a better system or a comparable system than in Malaysia? Okay, because definitely in Malaysia, okay, these are all as a result of exchange of experience and others for them to be able to have this structure. Right. If you look at this long-term national development policy, okay. And more than 5 years, that's one. This become, I think, normally, recently I think it was introduced, isn't it? 2020, and now we have another one. Is 2030 long-term plan. Okay, what was the name of this 2030 long-term plan for Malaysia? Anyone? Is it a common knowledge? Or international student, you can Google. What will be this long-term plan for Malaysian government? What they call it? I think they mentioned something that shared prosperity, isn't it? Okay, and then supported by the medium term, okay, 5 years plan. Okay, to support the outline perspective plan, the key working document for the implementation of the government development program. Okay, set out the macroeconomic growth targets and the size of allocation of the public sector development programs. Okay, these are the 5-year plan. So take into account because when we discuss about budget, this also budget is provided. So you can see that government agencies, right? If their budget, okay, their annual budget provided, consists of these two. One is operating budget, the other is development budget. Okay. Another question is some of this budget is basically, is it to support their main activities? Is it mainly funded by operating budget or mainly funded by development budget? So I think since you study various government agencies or ministries, you can take note this as well. Right, and then of course with the 5-year plan, then supported with the annual budget that we discussed so far. It's annual budget planning, okay, by Ministry of Finance, and the APU played a key role in determining the details of the annual development budget. Okay, so whereas MOF are focusing on annual the operating budget. Right, planning horizon. Okay, with regards to they call it. It should be I think there's another one. I should update this national vision policy, which is ended last year, and then there should be shared prosperity. Yeah. Okay. Nevertheless, for the Malaysian plan, you see that. Okay. So now we're moving to the 12th Malaysian plan. We should cover this year up to 2025. Okay, 5 years, and definitely specific allocation will be provided for this Malaysian plan. Okay, so the EPU and the Ministry of Economic Affairs, so what are the jobs? Formulate policies and strategic for socio-economic development, prepare medium and long-term plan, prepare development programs and projects, then monitor, advise the government on economic issues, plan and coordinate the privatization. I think that's an ongoing program. And definitely economic planning unit, okay, their economic inputs is very important. Okay, major examples of the government policies: Look East policy, privatization. Okay, these are, you know, quite a while. Okay, poverty eradication initiatives, and last time they also mentioned about there was one policy, it was replaced by poverty eradication initiative. Okay, new economic policy, NEP, new economic policy. And then it was replaced by, I think this one, poverty eradication initiative. Right, road safety initiative, and then nowadays, okay, SME entrepreneurship scheme. It's an example. I think with the change, what happened within economic activities, locally as well as globally, then definitely government cannot provide all the jobs required by the citizens and big companies as well. Okay, so that's why SME entrepreneurship, SMEs become a key areas as an engine of growth for the economy. Okay, so that's why many initiatives have been developed to support SME development. Okay, I think as an accounting students, or maybe in the future you are future entrepreneurs, so you should be you should know this all these schemes by the government, because it will, there's a lot of opportunities that is provided. So I think you know, you should use them because they provide very good support. And if you look at many small companies now become big companies, okay, one way or another they also receive support by the government. Okay, so you can see that advantage. Okay, if you look at the facilities, export assistance, marketing, those companies, if they want to move to the international arena, okay, like MITI, Matrade, Mardec, okay, SME Corp, SME banks. For SME banks, basically for financing, okay, like Matrade, Mardec, all these are basically providing the platform for the SMEs to promote their products internationally. Okay, all these are basically under Ministry of International Trade. Okay, government policies for socio-economic development. These are some of the inputs. I take these from the inputs given by Tan Sri Ibrahim Muhammad, former governor of Central Bank. There was a roundtable discussion by our Center of Islamic Economics. I think some of these are mentioned because we don't hear the next mentioned plan yet. Okay, so I think these are areas of priorities that government can consider. Okay, inherent socio-economic problems, allocation of resources and distribution of income. I think this is a big challenge to this country, okay, because we are being stuck as a middle income country. Okay, this one, allocation of resources to reflect the current needs of the country. Income inequality due to high-low productivity and urban and rural income disparities. Okay, that's also contribute to this income inequality within the country. Solutions via quality education and government socio-economic policy. Okay, effective. So you can see clearly. Okay, effective resource allocation. Right, I think we discussed that. So how government can develop their mechanisms. Of course, in terms of principle, it's easy to highlight, but how to translate it to practice. Then definitely inputs from key areas and to make that majority significant part of Malaysians, okay, or citizens can receive the benefits of this budget. I think it's very key consideration. Okay, tax collection, resource allocation, consider poverty and impact of digital economy or digital technology. I think that should be mobilized further. I think with COVID also, you can see that the use of digital technology, okay, and I think it's more on positive side, positive impact of digital technology. So this may be the scope of the areas. So you can see that they mention the main effect will be on the urban areas. So these need to be extended to rural areas. I think really in need, if you look at in terms of internet connectivity, as we speak, many of us are basically facing these challenges of poor internet connectivity. Okay, so I think nowadays, I think hopefully once government embark on the 5G, Okay, hopefully all these should be resolved, and SMEs from various platforms, okay, can take more opportunities I think all these trade through e-commerce, all these are very beneficial. Okay, and nowadays it's so easy to purchase even products globally. So by right, it should also help the local entrepreneurs. Okay, another by Professor Norma from Malaysian Economic Association. So government policy in Malaysia. Okay, and then I think she focusing on social protection, targeting the poor. I think still income inequality, aging population, middle income trap, okay, as mentioned, and to leverage on digital economy. Okay, middle income track. She suggested on to consider value-added activities, R&D, innovation, technology, and risk-taking behavior. I think the time has come that Malaysia need to focus on high value-added economic activities rather than focusing as a conduit countries. So I think for 10 or 20 years, the country has become a conduit. You know what I mean is all the resources are basically imported from other countries. So it's only assembly. Even the laborers are highly dependent on foreign laborers. So Malaysians themselves, they're not basically directly benefiting from. At the same time, government provide so much tax incentive that at the end, okay, so the impact towards the local, the domestic economy, okay, still can be, a mild impact. Okay. Another point she highlighted is need to improve social protection. Okay, I think that covers women, old folks, and others. Digitalization, more young people are not in social protection system. Okay, so social protection, I think definitely government have that schemes, but this can need to be extended further. And I think he mentioned about this. She mentioned about this one group, a middle group income. So these are they neither they cannot move upward within the income bracket. And also the issue is they are not covered by the current social protection system. Okay, this can become the focus for the government. Okay, I think these are referring possibly income between 5,000 to 10,000 income bracket. Okay, below 4,000 in the family possibly covered by zakat and other government schemes. At the same time, because of the economic situation nowadays, even the income bracket between 4,000 to 10,000, okay, it's quite challenging for them. For us, it's basically to to have a reasonable standard of living. Okay. Right, and as I mentioned, now government should be very busy to finally develop this 12 mission plan. If you look at this news, right? So they plan to table the 12 mission plan in March. So the current, I think this is highlighted by Datuk Sri Mustafa Muhammad, okay, the senior minister in the Prime Minister Department. Okay, now we move on to the budgeting process, okay, for the government machinery. Before that, any question? So one thing you need to take from this discussion is basically Malaysian plan, long-term plan as well as the Malaysian plan become the basis for the budgeting, for the annual budgeting. I think that's one you need to take up. Okay, so in other words, now is the 11 mission plan is completed. So we move on to 12 mission plan. But now the country, of course, very busy with this COVID and vaccination process. But moving forward, okay, so what will be in the 12 mission plan will dictate how the budget will be provided for the next 5 years. Okay. Okay, right, Sister Nur Izzah, thanks. It is under Prime Minister Department. Okay. Okay, no questions. I'll continue. Okay. Because definitely we need to look at the technical side of all this process, how government agencies will receive their funding. But before that, we need to understand the source of authority. So generally, in the case of government, to use the public fund, they must have mandate. Okay, so what is the source of the mandate? Generally, based on the current statutes. So in this case, there is a Supply Act, okay, a Supplementary Supply Act, Development Fund Act. Okay, so that's why development fund can be provided, and then development expenditures can be planned. Then development fund money that is being channeled under development fund can be used, okay, to support the development expenditures. So the Act is providing that flexibility at the scope. Treasury Instructions, Financial Procedures Act, I think we discussed this even before, and as well as Federal Constitution. So you can see that word, I think the top three, that would be closely directly related to the funding process for Malaysian plan, as well as for the annual budget with the Supply Act. I think from one year to another, once they approve, the budget is approved, so the Supply Act for that year will be issued, will be passed by the Parliament. Okay, so at federal level, these are prepared by Budget Management Division, the Malaysian Treasury, so that will be the Secretariat. Then all these, the controlling officers, okay, will be the main to submit the budget proposal. And of course, at the same time, at this point, of course, the agency providing the inputs, but the government themselves, the ministries, as well as the Ministry of Finance, they're also receiving inputs from public directly. I think that we need to take that into account. So not only directly by the government agencies. Okay, the second point there, warrants for approved budget allocation will be issued by the end of December for next year budget. Okay, so these are the basically source of authority. Okay, they submit the proposal. Once the budget is approved, the controlling officer will receive warrants. Okay, this is not warrants of arrest. This is warrants as an authority to use public fund. Okay, by the controlling officers. Okay, but the name almost similar, warrants. But they don't receive money. Okay, so controlling officers annually they don't receive. Let's say their budget is 30 billion, so they don't receive 30 billion in their bank accounts. Okay, or in the ministry bank accounts. So they receive warrants. Okay, a statement, a letter from the Treasury mentioning that the budget that they receive and how they can use those budgets. Okay, the components of government budget, revenue and expenditures. Okay, so you can see that. So these are two expenditures that I mentioned, development and operating. Okay, so development budget supporting the Malaysian plan. Okay, the 5 years plan. Operating is for annual. But of course, at the end, in terms of annual budget, these two components are there. There's also a component for development budget. There's also a component for operating budget. So under operating budget, there are two types, charge and supply. Generally, charge is at the government level. Okay, like the charges, the fixed payments to the judges, to the some payments for the royals and others. Okay, but supply is the one that is basically for government agencies that will be distributed to government agencies. Okay, this I think quite common. You can see this flow. So National Budget Office, Ministry of Finance, right? So the budget cycle. It started from, so you can see this. Started from January. Okay, January. This is January last year. Okay, last year for 2021. So in other words, for 2022, okay, the circular is already distributed by the Treasury to all government agencies to prepare their budget for next year. Okay, so January, okay, circular is issued, and of course on top of that, but the interesting part is the problem is, I think maybe there is delay, because I think they will issue that based on the Malaysian plan. Since the Malaysian plan not yet tabled to the Parliament, so I think my good guess this also will be delayed. Okay, but of course, what will happen need to be. But this is my quick guess. Since the development plan is is stable in March. Right. Anyway, normally these are the flow. Okay. Agencies prepare and submit new year estimates. Okay, you can see very tight. So by March, they should submit to the Treasury. Okay, Treasury here means Ministry of Finance. Receive submissions and BRO make individual study. So this BRO is Budget Review Officer. Okay, they are officers in Ministry of Finance. Okay, I think each ministry they have one BRO and their groups and his teams to basically investigate and evaluate the budget provided by the various agencies. Okay, to review budget. Makes sense. Okay, can they support, in other words. So that's why this BRO, I would say, okay, it's very similar to credit officer in the banks. Okay, before the credit officers, they can recommend your, if you, let's say, either if you have business or individual loans before being recommended for approval. So the credit officers must convince that you be able to repay, to execute or to deliver why you should be given such financing. Okay, so in the case of BRO, they also have to look at all these factors. Okay, with the budget requested by various controlling officers, can they execute what they plan? Okay, these are some of the factors that they have to look at. Okay, that's why past year spending still, I think, a very logical basis for them to evaluate, one of the considerations for them to evaluate the budget proposed by respective ministries. Okay, so you can see that, and there is a preliminary analysis. Okay, and then budget examination from May to July. And I think at the same time, they also engage with various stakeholders. Okay, July and August, approval of the new estimates at the cabinet level. And then in September, generally, okay, will be tabled to the parliament. To the parliament, from September to December is the debate to approve the budget. Okay, and by right, okay, end of December, the Ministry of Finance issues the warrants of expenditures to be delivered to all the controlling officers. So by right, okay, in the first January. Right, the control officers already received their budget, the warrants, for them to start spending. Okay, because they must receive the warrants. All these controlling officers, they must receive the warrants. Okay, to authorize them to spend money. Okay, without the warrants, right, the controlling officers cannot engage in any payments. Okay, or authorize any payments for their ministries or agencies under their ministries to get involved in any payments. Okay, because that will be against violations of the financial procedures. Okay, if they authorize any payment without warrants, they will be personally liable. Okay, and disciplinary action can be taken against them. Okay, so that's why the distribution of the finance. That's why this is part of how between the Ministry of Finance and the control officers. Once they receive the warrants and other issues of with regards to control officers, they also have to redistribute all these warrants to their program and activities under their control. Okay, so because generally control officers at the ministry level, and then they have to distribute. Okay, then once every government officers or controlling officers, accounting officers that is basically managing the warrants. Okay, once they receive, then they can start use public monies. Okay, I think that's in terms of the cycle and technical, because it has bearing on accounting operation. Okay, and because when you talk about spending, so there must be always authority, isn't it, to spend. I think in terms of either as an accountant or as an auditor, we always look at these areas. Okay. Right. So it's an example here, the preparation of 2019 national budget, just to show you. Okay. The what do you call it? The themes. If you look at this, United Malaysian Objective, Just and Sharing Society, okay, Mature Democratic Society, Sustainable Development, okay, I think if for next nation plan as well, sustainable development SDG is also one of the key areas. I think let me go back. All right. So if you look at, I put it in bold. All strategies and initiatives in 12 nation plan are formulated in line with the shared prosperity vision, as mentioned. These are the long-term prospective plan and also SDG goals. So I think in the case of nation government, they already adopt SDG goals as part of their policy. Yeah. Okay. So in other words, all government agencies have to respect this. So once they develop the budget, they must take into account a shared prosperity vision as well as SDG in their budget. Okay. Right. So there's another. So you can see that these are providing the details. Entrepreneurial development, I think, will be always as one of the key areas. Okay, economic growth, prudent spending, and well-being of rakyat. I think that will be an ongoing themes in the budget. Right. So, any feedbacks, even for the next mission plan? What are the key areas that government should focus on? Anyone? Okay, technical issues, the focus area, the need of main stakeholders. The outcome is realistic and the ability to address the need of stakeholders. The outcome is measurable with the use of appropriate KPIs. Okay, the identified outcome shall be consistent with National Outcome Mission Plan. Just highlight to you that when they prepare the budget, that should be considered. The Malaysian plan, of course, now we're moving to 12 Mission Plan. Issues to be given attention: the cross-cutting issues that involve overlapping of programs and shared outcomes within or between ministries, agencies are to be addressed appropriately via review and formative assessment. I think this is also consideration in terms of preparing the budget. At the end, they try to minimize the overlapping of redundancy of the programs, unless the scope. Okay. Sometimes same programs, just that different agencies are addressing the issue. For instance, in the case of women, in the case of women issues, last time there is an agency. Of course, there is a women ministry nowadays. And family. So there are agency which is basically cater urban areas, women problems in urban areas. Okay, last time they have this one board addressing the government, LPPKT or something. And then for the women at rural areas will be addressed by welfare department. So you can see that same programs, but will be addressed by different agencies because they are addressing at different areas. Okay, then you don't consider that as overlapping, because government also have to take into account sometimes in terms of affordability of the services. Maybe in the urban areas they can charge a higher price. Okay, whereas in the rural areas, okay, the facilities are fully subsidized. So all these are being taken into account. Right, I think because of the time, I will stop here. We'll continue in the next class. Okay, then we can discuss more things. Okay, so I stop presenting. Any question? Very happy, huh? Okay, very good. Right, 95 students at the end, So 10 students still missing. Okay, if you know that in your group members, you can, I think from time to time, you can ask your group members, right? If they have any problems to follow the study, so let me know. And I think we have to support each other, because sometimes students can follow. Generally, they can follow, but maybe one or two have that problems. So let me know. Right, if no questions, then I will end this with wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.